Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bad Luck Gamer, and today we got another class build that I'm actually very excited to share with you today. Honestly, when I started the series, I thought it was going to be a kind of a drag to try to come up with a new fancy build every week. And to be fair, it might eventually get to that point if I start running out of ideas. But honestly, recently, I'm like 5 weeks ahead. I've been coming up with a lot of really good ideas, and today is one of my favorites. But before we get into that, you know the thing. If you like the video, at the very least, leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. And let me know. People want me to share these build videos online. I don't really know where to put these videos exactly. So if anyone has any helpful information on where people might appreciate these kind of videos, please let me know down in the comments below. We have a Discord. You can join it. Talk table talk, all that fun stuff. And I have a Twitter if you don't want to join the Discord. All right, that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and get started with today's video. I'm just too excited because today we're going to be doing a Thaumaturge build. And the theme of this one is the Archivist. The Archivist is a delver into the deepest, darkest pits, dark libraries, forbidden tomes. They know the secrets of the universe and don't tell anyone for their own good. They are the recorders of forgotten history and the knowers of that what lies beyond what we see in the world. The Archivist character style build is one of a Thaumaturge that is very much orientated towards being a support, having good ability to be flexible. They're super useful in and outside of combat, and not only that, but it's very flavorful. Your character could be a member of some occultic order that looks to collect information. Maybe you were left some task by your prior mentor who's asked for you to go out into the world and search for certain kinds of forbidden tomes. There's literally nothing that the Archivist can't really be suited for, especially because in this build, I have been sure to add a decent amount of combat ability so that you're not just a skill monkey, you're not just a support build. You can hold your own if absolutely necessary, but I'll let you judge for yourself. So, starting out, when it comes to attributes, I have a recommended spread. Last video, it was more of like a vague, here are the main attributes you want to go for. This one, I have an exact spread because I feel like the Archivist needs very particular skill layout in order to be successful. Now, it doesn't really matter what ancestry background you pick, as long as you can get dexterity and charisma or intelligence for either of those two options, because you're gonna need a 16 in dexterity and a 16 in charisma, and then you can go with a 14 intelligence and 12 con. Though, depending on ancestry choices, that con might be a little bit more difficult. We'll get to my ancestry choices later, but my recommendation is 16 dex, 16 charisma, 14 intelligence, 12 con. That gives you a decent layout, gives you some survivability, and not only that, but a lot of what this build is going to be focused on is that your character is really good at implementing their esoterica, obviously, because you're going to be putting points into charisma whenever you can. And honestly, the Thaumaturge is so well designed that their weapon's flat damage, even though it's a one-handed weapon, is really good, especially with the implement empowerment, which just gives 2 extra damage to your strikes while you're holding an implement. And not only that, but because weakness damage doesn't multiply with critical, the only thing you really need to focus on for this character build is just being able to hit the enemy. All you need to do is worry about hitting the enemy, not focusing on critting the enemy, and you're going to do a majority of your damage anyway, even if you're not getting any bonuses from strength, because in the end, you're just going to be losing off on a few points anyway, and you're still going to do pretty decent damage. You're not going to be competing with a more striker dedicated class for sure, but that's not the point. The point is that you have a lot more than just that to go off of. I'm just saying your damage is not going to be that bad, honestly. But starting out, so we got that stat attribute layout. Now, when you level up and when you're getting ability boosts, or if you're looking into Apex items much later, your main stat focuses is going to be predominantly Dex and Charisma as your main focus. Your secondary focus is going to be Intelligence and Wisdom. Wisdom is actually very necessary in this build. Your character is going to be inherently squishier overall. You're not going to have a lot of health. And not only that, but you're not going to be wearing a lot of heavier armor. So you're going to need something to defend yourself, and good positioning and the ability to go first is really important. So having a really high perception, which the Magus has a really good perception skill, actually, better than most. Getting some wisdom added on top of that gives you a higher chance of going higher in the initiative, and that's just going to be one of my recommendations, is get your wisdom up as much as you can. Intelligence is important, but once you hit 18 intelligence, you don't really need much more intelligence than that. It's not a high focus of it. The intelligence is just going to give you more skills, more or less, and it's going to make some of your recall knowledge stuff a little bit better. But all right, so that's that. All right, however you do your attributes, it's going to be fine. This build is just very much focused around Dex and Charisma mostly, with Intelligence as its secondary focus. And then, of course, as a good tertiary con, whenever you can fit it in, just gives you more survivability, honestly. So, starting out at level 1, if you couldn't guess, you're going to be picking the Tome implement as your main implement. The big focus of this build is utilizing your tome, but maybe in ways you weren't initially expecting. Your character is going to get a bonus to recall knowledge checks whenever you're wielding the tome, and this will help with your Esoterica, not when it's the exploit invulnerability. I have to add, exploit invulnerability is not recall knowledge. But if you are doing a recall knowledge action on targets, this bonus will apply to your Esoterica lore check or to any of your skill proficiencies if they are higher for some reason or another. Not only that, but the tome is going to play some extra parts, but the biggest thing is it also gives you, starting out, it gives you 2 trained skill proficiencies. At 3rd level, you'll become an expert in one of them, and at 5th level, you become an expert in both of them. Obviously, the tome will level up and it will give you even more benefits, but starting out for your first 5 levels anyway, these skill proficiencies are going to be really good, especially because when you set them up in the beginning of the day, if you know what kind of creatures you're going to go up against, you can pick appropriate specific lore checks to them, making your recall knowledge checks even better. Or you can balance out your character in a variety of ways. Maybe you know you're going to be climbing somewhere. You can put you can get some athletics boost. You can get acrobatics boost. You can boost a wide variety of other skills. I highly recommend for the Archivist as well that you put points into deception and into intimidation. Because charisma is one of your main stats, both of these skills are going to be really good. And in combat, a good feint is going to be solid for helping you hit your target and deal damage. And demoralizing the target not only makes it easier for you to attack your target, but it also helps the rest of your team, at least until the enemy reduces their frightened condition. Overall, you're going to be using your charisma to its best, so I highly recommend these 2 skills specifically. Not only that, but because of your tome, you can just pick up whatever other proficiencies you need as you go. You can keep a medicine kit on you and be good at doing treat wounds, at least post the fact, or you can invest in your medicine skill because you are going to have a higher intelligence, and you can also do things like battle medicine as well. The Archivist is a very dynamic and diverse build style that you can build in a lot of ways. If you want a very more combat focus, you just go with demoralize and feinting, intimidation and deception. If you want to go more support, you can pick specific lore skills, or you can even go into medicine. The bonus that you get from the book just helps you round your character out so that you really have no skill weaknesses when it comes into a combat. But we're just getting started. The first feat I recommend is going to be Scroll Esoterica. More or less what this build is going to utilize a lot is scrolls. Scrolls that you have available, and not only that, but Scroll Esoterica is amazing because it allows you to utilize scrolls even if you're not a spellcaster. This is a big boon, and it allows you to essentially use these items that normally you'd have to take a very specific proficient or archetype dedication to get into, and you can use them from any tradition of magic. It doesn't even have to be just one. So not only over the course of your journey are you going to be stocking up on scrolls, but we're going to take more feats later to give your character that access to making their own scrolls in the moment, giving your character the ability to, again, more dynamically help on the battlefield by providing magical bonuses, effects, boons, what have you. You're not going to be great. They're going to use your class bonus, and your class bonus isn't terrible, but it's going to be it's going to be decent. But I would recommend that whatever scrolls you pick up, make them buffs, make them boons, things to help your allies out, or things that just are not going to rely on your class DC to utilize. But yeah, so these are the first. This is just the beginning, though. Starting out on level 2, you're actually going to dip into the Magus dedication. And it's going to be for some reasons. I'm not going to spoil it too soon. But all you need is a 14 in either Dex or in Strength. And of course, you have it in Dex. And a 14 in Intelligence, which if you followed my beginning build, by this point, you can easily pick up the Magus dedication. It gives you 2 cantrips. Again, you're not going to be much more trained in these, so I wouldn't recommend cantrips that are anything other than utility. Pick light cantrips are really good cantrip, honestly. There's a lot of good cantrips for you to pick up, and if you absolutely want to, you can pick up a damaging cantrip as well. It's just you're not going to be that great at it anyway, so that's just my recommendation. But the main reason why we're picking up the Magus dedication is because at level 4, you're going to pick up the basic martial magic feat from the dedication itself, which gives you access to a level 1 or 2 Magus feat. And we're going to pick up Raised Tome. Yes, what this build is really about is utilizing the Tome Implement as a shield. It qualifies, it counts as a book, it counts as a tome. Nothing says you can't do it. So yeah, your tome is going to be a shield. And so on your turns, you can demoralize a target, or feint a target, strike the target, hopefully doing your exploit damage if you've done that already, and then you're going to raise tome, and that's going to increase your survivability and make your character a lot better on the battlefield overall. Now, something that's very important to mention is that you can pick up shield block, and in fact, I'd recommend picking up shield block at 3rd level, but don't use shield block because it'll take you a day of downtime to replace your tome if it gets destroyed for whatever reason. Right now, we just need it for the circumstance bonus to AC, and a +2 AC bonus is pretty good, especially because you're going to have a high enough dex, and I recommend wearing light armor. We'll get to equipment later, obviously, but light armor, so your AC will be pretty solid. Honestly, it wouldn't even be worse than most standard martial classes, honestly. But let's go ahead and continue on. So at 5th level, you get to pick your 2nd implement, and this is a very important choice because this will determine, I believe, how you will look at the rest of your feats going forward. Now, I have 2 implement choices that I highly recommend. Weapon, to give your character, again, a more combat-focused ability. Not only that, but the initial implement bonus is you essentially get attack of opportunity, and if you somehow crit the enemy, you can disrupt the action no matter what kind of action it is, as long as it provokes. It has to be against your exploited enemy, so obviously it's not super powerful, but this can be really good. And if you're up front in combat anyway, using your book as a shield, the weapon is a really good way to keep your character relevant in combat. Now, the Regalia is my 2nd choice, and I pick Regalia because this utilizes a lot of what the tome has to offer. The Regalia gives you a bonus on Deception, Demoralize, and I believe Diplomacy checks. Yes, it does Intimidation, Deception, and Diplomacy, and you can do some really fun things. If you pick up the Bone Mott, for instance, skill feat eventually, you can essentially get a bonus to it while having your Regalia out. And Bone Mott's really good because it can drop an enemy's will DC. Not only that, but you improve your Demoralize, improve your feints. It's a really solid one to utilize overall, and you can swap it out with your tome if you need to, as you need it for the actions, because when you have your implements, if you have an action that requires an implement, you can swap them as a free action between the one you currently have in your hand. I personally love the idea, though, of the tome and the weapon. It gives a really cool idea of the Archivist who's holding like some ancient tome and has some ritualistic kind of kris or dagger in their offhand, and it's a very good aesthetic. And honestly, even with a dagger, you can do a lot of good damage anyway. So this is my overall recommendation. And I will say, if you pick the weapon implement, pick one that has finesse for obvious reasons. At 6th level, you're going to pick up Scroll Esoterica for the obvious choice of you're going to get a free 1st level scroll every day from any tradition, and it has to be a spell that you have access to. So uncommon, you need to discover yourself. And then at 8th level, you get a 2nd level spell. This is a really good one. It gives you a little bit more dynamics, and we're going to be building on this as we go. And not only that, but I have a recommendation for your 1st level scroll. Just because it's fun, I recommend taking Pocket Library every day. It allows you to take one of your skills that can be used to recall knowledge and store it away into the spell to pick it out for the bonus to a recall knowledge check later. You don't really need it because the tome has it, but I love the aesthetic of it. But there's a lot of good 1st level spells, and you can pick and choose as the situation demands, of course, ahead of time, because you can only do this during your daily preparations. I love this aesthetic, and not only that, but because of Scroll Esoterica, you can actually draw and use a scroll in your implement hand. So you can just say that your tome has these spells in it that you either inscribe at the beginning of the day or just magically write for you at the beginning of the day. Again, you can go as supernatural and occultic with your tome because it's giving you bonuses, it's giving you knowledge beyond what you would normally have, and not only that, but it's giving you access to spells in this sense. At 7th level, you get to pick your adept weapon, and or your adept implement, sorry. I highly recommend going with the tome. It's the major feature of the class, and it gives you good benefits. You could go weapon, but it's kind of cringe, you ask me. Honestly, you don't really need to right away. I recommend tome. Pick what suits you better, obviously. With the tome specifically, you get a free recall knowledge as long as you're holding the tome at the beginning of your turn, which is really good. And not only that, but if you succeed, right? Is it succeed or crit succeed? Yeah, if you just normally succeed, you then get a +1 circumstance bonus to your attack roll against a creature before the start of your next turn. This is really good because this actually technically stacks with the condition flat-footed, which you get from fainting a target, or the status from frightened if you demoralize the target. This means that on a lot of turns, you can actually get essentially a net +3 against an enemy. It's technically a +1 and they get a -2, but you know what I mean. This makes you very consistent with hitting the enemy, consistent with dealing your exploited damage or weakness damage even better. Like, this build is surprisingly very combat savvy. Even if you don't take the weapon implement, you are very likely to hit your opponent, and you could probably do it a couple times if you're not afraid of getting bonked on your turn. So again, keep raised home available to yourself. 8th level is kind of a free slot. Pick whatever feat you feel works with your idea for your character. There's a lot of different ways. You can even dip back into Magus if you want to pick more spell casting. Magus isn't the best for spell casting in my opinion, but it can give you some more spells. You can pick up the basic bonded spell casting, which is okay. I recommend picking up Know-It-All. Know-It-All is great because whenever you succeed on a recall knowledge check, you're going to get additional information, and if you crit succeed, you get even more additional information. This allows you to quickly analyze enemies on the battlefield, and since you're using the tome and getting a free recall knowledge at the beginning of your turns, you essentially get the ability to just get a lot of information with very little action input. Actually, it's very good, and Know-It-All fits with the build perfectly. 10th level is similar to the last. I don't have anything specific for the build per se other than a recommendation. It's not necessary though, so you can pick up more spellcasting if you want. That's good. I recommend Share Weakness. As an action, you can share the exploited benefit with one of your allies, which is really good. It's for the Mortal Weakness specifically though. No, yeah, I think Mortal Weakness is both of them. I think there's personal antithesis. No, yeah, Mortal Weakness is if it has a weakness. I don't know. Either way, how it works, it doesn't really matter. This is a really good action to allow your allies to do more damage. And since you're not getting the most from strength in this build, for instance, being able to boost ally damage just helps your damage overall, even though you are consistently doing some good damage. Share Weakness is very solid, and it can build into greater things as well. At 12th level, you're actually going to dip back into the Magus this time to pick up Advanced Martial Magic, and you're going to get Shielded Tome. This is amazing because now you can fuse a tome with your book every day. Your tome becomes a legitimate full shield, or that gets the stats of the shield. Now you can utilize shield block very appropriately, and you can get a lot of benefit out of it. So picking up shield block, and I kind of glaze over this part. For your general feats up until this point, I recommend shield block and incredible initiative. Initiative, as I mentioned towards the beginning of the video, is very important. It really helps your character position better in combat, especially since you're squishier. And shield block, because now when you get access to it at level 12, you'll be able to block with your shield, giving you a surprisingly good amount of durability on the battlefield, as long as you don't mind using your reaction to prevent yourself from taking damage, which, you know, if you're dead, you can't really do too much. So I do recommend shield block. And if you're getting focused, it's very good too. Or, you know, you could save that reaction for just opportunity attacking with your implement weapon, if that's the one you have up until this point. Either way, Shielded Tome is a really, really good pickup, and you can get other benefits from the shield now with utilizing your tome. So you'll be using your book in the battlefield to deflect people, get bonuses, and get bonus to recall knowledge throughout. And it's a very good build. I can't understate enough. This is a very solid build, even for combat. At 14th level, you're going to get Elaborate Scroll Esoterica. This is going to give you access to a 3rd and 4th level spell scroll, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and actually you'll get access to a 5th level scroll at level 16 as well. So a very good pickup, adds to your versatility. This is a good way to pick up haste event as well, because haste is a really good ability for one of your teammates or for yourself, especially when we pick it up later, because you can get the 7th level haste, which can boost your whole team. At 15th level, you're going to pick your 3rd implement. I highly recommend the Amulet, even though you are a little bit heavy in reactions. Amulet is really good to help reduce damage to yourself or an ally, as long as that ally is within 15 feet. And the resistance is really good. This mimics even the champion reaction, as you get 2 plus your level in resistance to that to the resistance that you can give to your ally. This is really good for yourself, really good for your allies, and, you know, not only that, but you can swap it with either your weapon or your tome. I recommend the weapon in this case if you're using your reaction, so that you can get your benefit from your book on your next turn. And it, again, just really solid. Your character's very dynamic. What you can do just very much depends on the position you're in and what's happening, and you can just react to a lot of things. I absolutely love this build. At 16th level is another free feat slot. Pick what you like, pick what works with you. There's a lot of really good choices out there. You can pick the Demens one. I really like that one. Having your own kind of secret base, I think, is really, really cool. But for this build here, I actually put Sever Magic right in here, because this allows you to essentially cut through spells, allowing you to attempt to counteract a spell currently ongoing onto the target of your strike. I think this is a really good action, and again, it really enforces that your Archivist is a master of knowledge and knows much about magic and the workings of magical things, allowing you to literally sever a spell with a strike and saying some, you know, maybe forbidden words. I like the idea of it, and that's why Sever Magic is really cool to me. It's not necessary for the build though, so pick what fits for you. This worked for my aesthetic. At level 18, we're picking up Grand Scroll Esoterica. This gives you a 6th level spell, and when you hit 20th level, you'll get a 7th level spell. It's a little late for picking up group haste, I admit, but you know what? It's better than not having group haste. And these scrolls, like, the benefit of the Scroll Esoterica, and the reason why they don't, like, level up the same way a caster does, or even like partial caster spellcasting does, is you every day get a pick from all traditions of magic, as long as they're not uncommon spells. These Scroll Esoterica are amazing because they give you a lot of utility, the ability to make and select spells of levels 1 to 7. you're going to be very flexible, and depending on how, intelligently you play, you can do some pretty big brain things. And even if you aren't using them for combat per se, and more for utility and exploration, your character is still doing really good damage in combat, as I've mentioned before, and you're gonna be pretty sturdy, pretty durable with just the bonuses to AC and everything. So, this is the overall build. At 20th level, I recommended that you pick up Ubiquitous Weakness. It's another free slot, so not necessary for the build. Pick whatever 20th level thing you can get, the ultimate demens or whatever that allows you to teleport your demens as long as the area is not claimed. I like that idea too. I think that's a really fun one. Gives you a very Doctor Strange kind of feel to your character. But Ubiquitous Weakness allows you to share weakness with more allies, doing more damage. It's all really, really good. All right, and that's it. And this is the standard build. This is not including if you're using the bonus archetype feat or rule, which I highly recommend everyone does. The bonus archetype rule really can flesh characters out. So I do have some recommendations for that. I'm not going to go into each of those feats, just what ones I'd recommend. I do want to give a honorable mention. I was really, really looking at Scroll Trickster to kind of give that scroll use a little extra oomph. But a lot of what makes Scroll Trickster good is how it interacts with the trick magic item. But you don't trick magic item. You actually just gain access to the ability to use scrolls. So a lot of the feats and like even the core dedication feat really doesn't work with Scroll Trickster. You can get access to more scrolls through use of the feat. So if you really want more scrolls, that's the way to go. But there's a lot of feats in there that just aren't as useful. What I do actually recommend for the Archivist is the Eldritch Researcher. It's an uncommon one, but it's a really fun one. It gives your character that more occultic feel to it. You get the access to some spells. You get the ability to summon a aberration creature and then just ask it an important question. There's a lot of really cool things about the Eldritch Researcher that fits a lot of narrative flair, gives you more utility, is really good. If you want something a little bit more combat, though, I also recommend the Bastion, because when you pick up Ray's Tome, you can use the tome as well for any shield-related feats. So a lot of what Bastion offers allows you to get a lot of benefit out of it. Again, though, a lot of it is for the shield block reaction, which I don't recommend until you at least get Shielded Tome, which isn't until level 12. So you might not pick up Bastion until later, or you might pre-pick up Bastion just to get some feats early on. But this can really benefit. You can be really good at protecting yourself and others with your Shielded Tome. It's a really solid and fun way to play, in my mind. And last but not least, I'm also going to recommend the Ritualist, giving you access to even more spells, giving you more you can do. Very much fits the Archivist vibe, and it shows that your character has this deep esoteric knowledge and eldritch knowledge of these long forgotten rituals. It's really good. That is an uncommon one, and if your DM doesn't allow for that particular one, then I am going to recommend the Talisman Dabbler, because there are already in the Thaumaturge feats Talisman Dabbler related feats. This is just a way to kind of get both the scroll and talisman bonuses at the same time. They can be really good, and talismans are not something I'd underestimate, especially because of the Treasure Vault. It's another book coming out, I think, in February of next year, is going to be adding more to the talismans and probably even scroll types. And so I would recommend keeping an eye on that for your Thaumaturge, especially if you're getting started with a game soon. By the time Treasure Vault comes out, you might be getting up to a level where the Talisman Dabbler stuff might actually be really, really cool. As far as equipment is concerned, you just got to go based on what your strength is going to be. If your strength is at least a 10, then you can wear leather armor. Leather armor is really good. You can put bonuses on it. I don't really got much more to say than that. It's just very solid. If you don't have 10 strength, then you're going to probably go with Explorer's clothing, and then you're going to probably need armbands of armor, or whatever they're called. They allow you to get the essentially armor potency when you're not wearing armor and all that kind of stuff, and resistances. A good magic item, and will definitely help with your character's survivability and scaling into the end game. The other thing I'm going to recommend is the War Razor. Amongst the finesse weapons, especially in the knife range, the War Razor is really, really good. Not only is it agile and finesse, allowing you to attack more times without worrying about the penalty as much, applying your weakness more. That's very, very important. But it also has deadly D6? No, deadly D8. So if you do manage to crit, you're doing an additional D8 damage on top of that. And it has Backstabber. If the enemy is flat-footed, and let me read it here 100% just to be sure. If the enemy is flat-footed, you do 1 precision damage in addition to your normal damage. If the precision damage increases to 2 if the weapon is a +3. It's not a very big thing, but more damage is more damage, and it's just more flat damage for you to add to your build. And why not just do more damage since you're going to be using a dagger that's only a d4 anyway? And again, I have to reiterate, because of how Empower Implement works, because the Thaumaturge only really uses one-handed weapons anyway, and because a good amount of your damage is going to be coming from your mortal weakness that you put on enemies, the damage of your weapon isn't going to be as much of a factor. Even though it's a D4 or D4s when you get, striking runes, it's still going to scale pretty well into the late game. You're not going to be, again, this is not a striker build. Do not compare it to a striker build. It's a decent combat build that has a bunch of utility on top of it. And that's the way you should look at it. And there's a lot of things about that as well that I didn't really go into. How the tome works after Adept and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you can figure it out yourselves, figuring out all the benefits that it does. But with the tome, I mean, you'll get master and legendary proficiencies. You can do a lot of really cool stuff in the late game. If you went with weapon, you'll be pretty good in combat. You'll be able to get a +2 bonus against your exploited target when you're attacking them, which means that your attack bonus is going to be even better, which makes the War Razor even better because you have a higher chance of crit and getting that deadly off. And not only that, but the exploit vulnerability feature, or the intensify vulnerability for both the tome and the weapon and even the Regalia, all really work as well for helping your teammates in combat or doing more damage. So I hope y'all like the Archivist. I will go into my Ancestry picks before we end here. My Ancestry pick, I actually highly, highly recommend the Ancient Elf specifically for this build. You're a lot squishier. You have 6 HP, and they have Con as a negative stat. You can use that extra free boost, though, to boost Con, making it a flat 0. Or if you want to go really dangerous, you can boost your intelligence or your charisma instead because of elf, and then you can have a 16 in your dex, intelligence, and charisma starting out, which is a very interesting choice. And if you pick up the toughness general feat, it will kind of counterbalance the -8 more or less. So that's a very viable choice. Another really, really good choice to go with is any Ancestry with a Geniekin Versal Heritage, Ifrit, Oread, whatever, because if you pick up the Geniekin Weapon Familiarity, you get access to the Wish Knife. The Wish Knife is a really, really good weapon. It has the Resonant feature, so if you have any abilities, spells, or even runes that do a certain type of damage, you can do even more damage. It's a really good weapon. It's agile finesse as well. So, that's another way you can go, another way the Archivist can be skinned for you. And yeah, this particular build is a S-class build. It has probably like B+ to A level combat ability. It does really, really good consistent damage. Is very helpful in combat. Can do a lot of good support abilities. There's a lot of things. There's not a lot of things it can't do as in combat. I would say B+ just because its damage is not super high, but obviously with all the utility, I think you'll be fine. The roleplay ability is S tier because there's so many good ways you can narrate this Archivist, their search for tomes. Character arcs can be about finding secret books, even finding wizard tomes, which are a common loot item if you fight magic casters, can lead to secrets and rituals as well, which really plays into the to the Ritualist archetype very, very well, and to the Archivist style very, very well. And as far as utility outside of combat, I mean, you get a lot of skills. You get a lot of skills. You get knowledge skills automatically increase. Your Esoterica automatically increases. the Tome Implement gives you like legendary skill proficiencies automatically. And not only that, but they're flexible because you can change them every day. So your character is going to be able to do a lot. And I didn't even go into skill feats because there's literally too many skill feats that you can possibly go into building this build. Whether you go for a straight demoralized build, or whether you go for a high feint build, whether you go for a Beaumont style diplomacy build. There's even really good, arcana, nature, religion checks. Medicine could be really good if you really wanted to go with the battle medicine route. Heck, you could even pick up medic along with that, and you can just be a good off healer for your group as well. Like, the Archivist has just so much potential to do so many great things in out of combat, really good roleplay. This is a really good archetype. So, or not archetype, but playstyle choice. You know what I mean? Archivist, archetype. I keep getting these words confused. But that's going to be it for me. I'm so sorry this video is so long. Thaumaturge, who would have guessed it's going to be a long video. But I hope you enjoyed nonetheless. Let me know what you think of this build down in the comments below. And we will eventually be doing community builds. So join the Discord. We actually have a class build section on the Discord. You can go there and put in your build ideas. I'll look through those whenever I do my next build video. Not soon. I got a bunch kind of set up and ready to go, but eventually we will be having like a community highlight build video, which I think will be really fun. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.